There is a quiet difference between someone who is constantly looking outward for approval and someone who is rooted within herself. At first glance, both may appear confident, both may appear strong, but the source of that strength is not the same. One depends on how she is seen, how she is treated, how she is validated. The other stands in something deeper, something that does not shift with every opinion, every reaction, every moment of attention or neglect. A woman who is grounded in self-respect does not move through life asking, "Am I enough for them?" Instead, there is a silent understanding within her that says, "I know who I am." And this knowing is not loud. It is not something she needs to prove or constantly express. It is something she carries quietly in the way she speaks, in the way she chooses, in the way she walks away when something does not align with her values. When self-worth is tied to validation, it becomes unstable. One moment you feel appreciated, the next you feel uncertain. A compliment can lift you and a lack of attention can bring you down. This creates a cycle where your emotional state depends on something outside of your control. And over time, this can become exhausting because you are constantly adjusting yourself to maintain that sense of approval. But when a woman begins to see this clearly, something starts to change. She realizes that no amount of external validation can replace internal clarity. That even if the world praises her, if she does not respect herself, it will never feel complete. And on the other side, even if the world is silent, if she knows her worth, she does not feel empty. This shift does not happen overnight. It comes from observation, from noticing how often she has adjusted herself to fit expectations, how often she has stayed in situations that did not feel right simply to be accepted. How often she has questioned her own value based on how others responded to her. And slowly, she begins to return to herself. She begins to ask different questions. Not, "Do they like me?" but, "Does this feel right for me?" Not, "How can I be enough for them?" but, "Am I honoring myself in this moment?" These questions change the direction of her attention. Instead of constantly looking outward, she begins to look inward. She becomes more aware of her boundaries, her values, her energy. She starts to notice when something feels off, when something requires her to shrink, to compromise, to lose connection with herself. And in those moments, she makes different choices. Not always easy choices, but clear ones. She steps back from what does not respect her. She no longer stays where she is tolerated instead of valued. She does not chase what is inconsistent. She does not beg for attention that should be given freely. This is not arrogance. It is not about believing she is above others. It is about understanding that her time, her energy, her presence have value. And that value does not increase or decrease based on someone else's recognition. There is also a certain calm that comes with this. Because when you are no longer chasing validation, you are no longer constantly evaluating yourself through the eyes of others. You are not overthinking every interaction, not replaying every conversation, not trying to control how you are perceived. You become more natural, more present, more at ease in your own space. You speak because you have something to say, not because you are trying to impress. You act because it aligns with you, not because you are seeking approval. This creates a quiet confidence that is difficult to imitate. It is not built on performance, but on alignment. It does not need to be announced because it is felt. People may not always understand it, but they sense it. There is a stability in you that does not fluctuate easily, and this stability allows you to move through life differently. You are not easily pulled into situations that drain you. You are not easily influenced by opinions that do not matter. You are not constantly seeking reassurance. Instead, you move with a sense of self that remains, even when things around you change. You remain grounded, even when others are uncertain. You remain clear, even when there is noise. Because when a woman is rooted in self-respect, she is no longer dependent on the world to tell her who she is. She already knows. And from that knowing, everything else begins to align naturally. She does not need to chase attention because her presence already holds weight. She does not need to convince others of her worth because she is not questioning it within herself. And in that quiet certainty, there is a kind of beauty that goes beyond appearance, a beauty that is steady, grounded, and deeply real. There is a natural pull in life toward reaction. Something happens, and almost instantly, the mind and emotions respond. Words are said, energy shifts, and before there is any awareness, a reaction is already in motion. For many, this becomes a habit, responding to everything, engaging in every situation, allowing every emotion to take control. And over time, this creates a life that feels heavy, filled with unnecessary tension. But a woman who understands herself begins to move differently. She does not feel the need to respond to everything that appears in front of her. She begins to see that not every situation deserves her energy. Not every comment requires her reply. Not every emotion needs to be expressed immediately. And in that realization, she starts to choose peace over constant reaction. This does not mean she avoids life or suppresses how she feels. It means she has developed the awareness to pause, to notice what is happening within her before she allows it to move outward. That small pause changes everything. Because in that moment, she is no longer acting from impulse. She is acting from clarity. When someone speaks in a way that could provoke her, she does not immediately mirror that energy. She observes. She notices the tone, the intention, but also her own internal response. And instead of reacting, she decides whether engaging is necessary. Sometimes silence becomes her response. Not because she has nothing to say, but because she understands that not every situation is worth her peace. This kind of calm is often misunderstood. Some may see it as weakness or indifference. But in reality, it is discipline. It is strength. Because it takes awareness to not be pulled into every emotional wave. It takes clarity to step back when everything around you is pushing you to react. A reactive life is exhausting. You are constantly pulled into different directions, responding to every shift in your environment. Your mood depends on what others say or do. Your state changes based on external triggers, and this creates instability because you are not grounded within yourself. You are moved by everything outside of you. But when a woman chooses peace, she begins to create stability within. She is no longer easily shaken. Her state is not controlled by every situation. She remains centered, even when things around her are not. And this center becomes her strength. You may notice that she does not engage in unnecessary conflict. She does not argue to prove a point that does not matter. She does not try to win every conversation. She understands that being right is not always more important than being at peace. This changes how she communicates. Her words become more intentional. She speaks when there is something meaningful to say, not just to fill silence or defend herself. And when she does speak, there is a calmness in her tone, a clarity in her expression, because she is not speaking from reaction, but from awareness. There is also a deeper understanding that develops. She begins to see that many situations are not worth the emotional cost, that engaging in negativity only prolongs it, that reacting to chaos often creates more chaos. And so she becomes more selective with her energy. This selectiveness is not about distancing herself from life, but about protecting her inner space. She chooses where to invest her attention. She chooses what to carry and what to let go. And in doing so, she preserves her peace. Over time, this becomes her natural state. She is no longer easily triggered. She does not feel the need to prove herself in every situation. She is not caught in cycles of unnecessary drama. Instead, she moves with a quiet steadiness. And this steadiness creates a different presence. When she enters a space, there is a sense of calm around her. Not because she is trying to control the environment, but because she is not adding to the noise. She is not reacting to everything. And that absence of reaction creates space. People may not always understand this at first. Some may expect her to respond the way others do, to react, to engage, to escalate. But over time, her consistency speaks for itself. Her calm is not temporary. It is not dependent on the situation. It is something she carries within. And this is where her true strength lies. Not in how loudly she can respond, but in how quietly she can remain centered. Not in how quickly she reacts, but in how clearly she chooses her response. Because choosing peace is not passive. It is intentional. It is a decision made again and again, in small moments, in quiet pauses, in the space between thought and action. And in that decision, she frees herself from unnecessary weight. She no longer carries every conflict, every emotion, every situation. She moves through life lighter, clearer, more grounded. And in that grounded presence, there is a beauty that does not need to be expressed loudly. It is felt in her calm, in her patience, in her ability to remain steady when everything else is moving. Because when a woman chooses peace over drama, she is no longer controlled by the outside world. She is guided by something deeper within herself. There is a subtle difference between being physically present and being truly present. Many people move through their day thinking, planning, remembering, worrying, rarely fully experiencing what is in front of them. The mind is constantly somewhere else, either in the past or the future. And because of this, even meaningful moments can feel distant, as if life is happening, but not fully being lived. A woman who is truly grounded within herself begins to notice this pattern. She sees how often the mind drifts, how it pulls her away from what is actually happening. And instead of continuing to follow that movement unconsciously, she begins to return again and again to the present moment. This return is simple, but powerful. It is not about forcing the mind to be silent, but about gently bringing attention back to what is real. The feeling of her breath, the sound of her surroundings, the presence of the person in front of her. These are small things, often overlooked, but they anchor her in reality. When she is present, her experience changes. She is no longer divided between what is happening and what she is thinking about. She is fully engaged. Whether she is speaking, listening, working, or resting, there is a quality of attention that is complete. And in that completeness, there is a sense of calm. This calm is not something she creates. It arises naturally when the mind is not constantly pulling her in different directions. There is less tension, less internal noise, less unnecessary thinking. And because of this, her presence becomes lighter, more grounded. You may notice this in how she listens. She is not waiting for her turn to speak. She is not distracted by her own thoughts while someone else is talking. She is fully there, attentive, aware, and this makes her presence feel genuine because the same is true for her actions. When she is doing something, she is with it. She is not rushing through it while thinking about what comes next. She gives her attention to the moment, and because of that, even simple tasks carry a sense of ease. This presence creates a natural grace, not something practiced or forced, but something that comes from alignment. Her movements are not hurried or scattered. There is a rhythm, a steadiness, a sense that she is not being pulled in multiple directions at once. Overthinking often creates a different kind of energy, restless, tense, disconnected. It makes you question yourself, second-guess your actions, replay conversations, anticipate outcomes. And this constant mental activity takes you away from direct experience. But when she is not caught in overthinking, she moves differently. She trusts the moment. She responds to what is happening instead of trying to control everything in advance. And this trust allows her to relax into the present rather than resist it. There is also a deeper clarity that comes with this. When the mind is quieter, perception becomes sharper. She sees situations more directly without adding layers of assumption or fear. She understands what is needed now rather than what might be needed later. This clarity influences her decisions. She is not overwhelmed by possibilities. She is not stuck in analysis. She sees what is in front of her and responds accordingly. And because of this, her actions feel more natural, more aligned. Presence also changes how she experiences herself. She is less caught in self-judgment, less concerned with how she appears, less focused on external validation. Her attention is not constantly turned inward in a critical way. It is grounded in the moment. This creates a sense of ease within her. She is not trying to be someone else, not trying to perform, not trying to meet every expectation. She is simply here, as she is, without unnecessary resistance. Over time, this way of being becomes her foundation. She still thinks when it is needed. She still plans when it is appropriate. But she is no longer lost in thought. She returns to the present more quickly. She remains connected to what is real. And this connection changes everything. Life feels more direct, more vivid, more meaningful, not because external circumstances are different, but because she is actually experiencing them rather than thinking about them. There is a quiet beauty in this presence. It is not loud or attention-seeking. It is subtle, steady, and deeply felt. People may not always be able to explain it, but they sense it. There is something grounded, something real, something calm about her. Because when a woman is present, she is not scattered across time. She is here, fully engaged, fully aware, fully alive in the moment. And in that presence, she carries a natural elegance that does not come from effort, but from being deeply connected to life as it is unfolding. There comes a point where a woman begins to understand that her energy is not endless, and not everyone deserves access to it. For a long time, she may have believed that being kind meant always being available, that being a good person meant saying yes, even when something within her felt uncomfortable. She may have ignored her own limits to keep the peace, to avoid conflict, to be accepted. But over time, this creates a quiet imbalance, because every time she ignores herself, she moves further away from her own center. At first, it may not be obvious. She gives, she supports, she adjusts. But slowly there is a feeling of depletion, a sense that she is doing too much for others while neglecting herself. And this is where awareness begins. She starts to notice that her discomfort is not random. It is a signal that something is not aligned, that her boundaries are being crossed, sometimes by others, and sometimes by herself. When she begins to listen to that signal, everything starts to shift. She realizes that boundaries are not barriers meant to push people away. They are a form of self-respect, a way of protecting her time, her energy, and her emotional space. And more importantly, they are a way of staying connected to herself. Setting boundaries, however, is not always easy, especially when she has been used to putting others first. There may be guilt, a feeling that saying no will disappoint someone, that it will create distance, that it will change how she is seen. But she begins to understand that constantly saying yes to others while saying no to herself is not sustainable. So she starts with small steps. She pauses before agreeing to something. She checks in with herself. Do I have the energy for this? Does this feel right for me? And instead of automatically responding, she allows herself a moment of clarity. This pause is important because it breaks the pattern of automatic compliance. When she says no, she does not need to explain everything. She does not need to justify her decision with long reasons or apologies. Her no is not an act of rejection. It is an act of alignment. It means she is honoring her own limits, her own needs, her own well-being. Over time, this becomes more natural. She no longer feels the same level of guilt because she begins to see the difference it makes. She feels less drained, less overwhelmed. She has more energy for what truly matters. And because of this, her presence becomes more genuine. There is also a shift in how others respond to her. At first, some may not understand. They may be used to her always being available, always agreeing, always accommodating. And when that changes, it may feel unfamiliar. But her consistency teaches people how to treat her. She is no longer sending mixed signals. She is clear, and that clarity creates respect. Because when she respects her own boundaries, others begin to recognize them as well. This does not mean she becomes distant or closed off. It means she becomes intentional. She still gives, she still supports, but it comes from a place of choice, not obligation. She is not giving to be accepted. She is giving because it feels right. There is a quiet strength in this, because it requires her to stay connected to herself, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it means disappointing someone, even when it challenges old patterns. But she understands that temporary discomfort is better than long-term imbalance. Boundaries also protect her emotional space. She is no longer absorbing everything around her. She does not take on every problem, every emotion, every expectation. She is able to stay grounded, to remain centered, even when others are not. This grounding changes how she moves through life. She is less reactive, less overwhelmed, more stable. She knows what she can carry and what she needs to let go. And this awareness allows her to navigate situations with more clarity. There is also a deeper sense of self-trust that develops. Each time she honors her boundary, she reinforces her connection with herself. She proves to herself that her needs matter, that her limits are valid, that she can rely on her own judgment. And this trust becomes a foundation. Because when you trust yourself, you are less dependent on external approval. You are less likely to compromise your well-being for temporary acceptance. Over time, boundaries become less about effort and more about alignment. She no longer has to think so much about them. They are a natural expression of who she is. She knows what feels right, and she follows that knowing. And in this way, she creates a life that is more balanced, more respectful, more in tune with her own energy. Not by controlling others, but by being clear with herself. Because when a woman sets boundaries without guilt, she is not pushing people away. She is making space for what truly respects her to remain. There are moments in life that feel heavy, uncomfortable, even overwhelming. Moments that most people try to avoid, suppress, or escape from. Pain, disappointment, loss, confusion. These are not experiences anyone actively seeks, and yet they are part of being human. The difference is not in whether pain appears, but in how it is met. For a long time, it may feel natural to resist it, to distract yourself, to move away from it as quickly as possible, to pretend it is not there. But when pain is avoided, it does not disappear. It remains beneath the surface, unresolved, shaping your thoughts, your reactions, your patterns, in ways that are often not immediately visible. A woman who begins to understand herself does not run from this experience in the same way. She does not see pain as something that must be eliminated immediately. Instead, she begins to see it as something that can be understood, not something to hold on to, but something to move through with awareness. This does not mean she enjoys it or seeks it out. It means she no longer fears it in the same way. When something difficult arises, she allows herself to feel it, not to become lost in it, but to acknowledge it honestly. There is no denial, no suppression. There is a willingness to be present with what is real. This presence changes the experience, because when you stop resisting pain, you remove one layer of struggle. The discomfort may still be there, but the tension created by trying to push it away begins to soften. And in that softening, there is space to see more clearly. She begins to notice what the experience is showing her. Not in an analytical way, but in a direct, felt sense. Where did this feeling come from? What does it reveal about her attachments, her expectations, her boundaries? Instead of reacting blindly, she observes. This observation is not judgment. She is not criticizing herself for feeling a certain way. She is simply noticing. And in that noticing, there is understanding. Patterns begin to become visible. The same emotional responses that once felt random start to make sense. Through this, she begins to grow. Not because pain is forcing her to, but because she is open to learning from it. She sees how certain situations repeat, how certain reactions return, and she starts to understand what needs to change. Not outside, but within her approach. There is also a strengthening that happens here. Each time she faces something difficult, without running away, she builds resilience, not by hardening herself, but by becoming more stable within. She learns that she can experience discomfort and still remain grounded, that she can feel deeply without losing herself. This creates a different kind of confidence, not based on everything going well, but based on her ability to handle what comes. She no longer depends on perfect conditions to feel okay. She trusts that even when things are uncertain or painful, she can meet them with awareness. Over time, pain loses its power to control her in the same way. It is no longer something that immediately overwhelms or defines her. It becomes something that passes through, something that can be understood and released. She also becomes more compassionate, not only toward others, but toward herself. Because when you allow yourself to feel and understand your own experiences, you naturally develop a deeper sense of patience. You no longer expect yourself to be perfect, to never struggle, to always have clarity. Instead, you accept that growth is a process, that there will be moments of confusion, of discomfort, of learning. And in accepting this, you create a more supportive inner environment. This changes how she moves through relationships, challenges, and life itself. She is not avoiding difficulty at all costs. She is not collapsing when things go wrong. She remains steady even when things are not easy. There is a quiet strength in this, because it is not based on resistance, but on acceptance and awareness. She does not need to fight every difficult moment. She meets it, understands it, and allows it to pass. And in doing so, she transforms, not in a dramatic way, but in a steady, continuous way. Each experience adds to her depth, her clarity, her understanding of herself. This is where true growth happens, not in comfort, but in how you relate to discomfort. Not in avoiding pain, but in learning from it without being consumed by it. Because when a woman chooses to grow through pain, instead of running from it, she begins to develop a strength that cannot be easily shaken. A strength that comes from experience, from awareness, from having faced what was difficult and remained present. And in that presence, there is a depth that cannot be imitated. A quiet resilience that shapes the way she carries herself, the way she speaks, the way she lives. Because what she has faced has not broken her, it has refined her. There is a kind of confidence that tries to be seen, and there is a kind that simply exists. One needs to speak loudly to prove, to convince. The other does not need to announce itself at all. It is felt in presence, in stillness, in the way a woman carries herself without needing to draw attention. This is quiet confidence, and it comes not from external validation, but from inner alignment. A woman who moves in quiet confidence is not trying to become someone else. She is not adjusting herself constantly to fit expectations. She has spent time understanding who she is, what she values, what feels right to her. And because of this understanding, her actions begin to reflect that clarity. This does not mean she is perfect or without doubt. It means she is no longer defined by those doubts. They may arise, but they do not control her direction. She does not wait to feel completely certain before she acts. She moves with what she knows, with what feels aligned, even if everything is not fully clear. There is a simplicity in the way she expresses herself. She does not over-explain. She does not try to impress with every word. When she speaks, there is intention behind it. When she is silent, there is no discomfort. She is not trying to fill space just to be noticed. She is comfortable in her own presence. This comfort comes from not constantly seeking approval. She is not looking outward to confirm her worth in every moment. She trusts her own judgment. She knows that not everyone will understand her, and she is at peace with that. This acceptance removes a great deal of internal pressure because she is not trying to prove herself. Her energy remains steady. She is not reacting to every opinion or adjusting to every expectation. She moves consistently, guided by her own understanding. And this consistency creates a sense of reliability, not only for others, but within herself. You may notice that she does not compete in the same way. She is not comparing herself constantly, not measuring her value against someone else's. She understands that her path is her own. And this understanding allows her to focus on her growth rather than on how she appears in comparison. This creates a different kind of presence. It is not loud or attention-seeking, but it is noticeable. There is something grounded about her, something that does not shift easily. People may not always be able to explain it, but they feel it. There is a calm assurance, a sense that she is not trying to be something she is not. Her actions reflect this. She does what she says she will do. She follows through. She does not rely on words alone. And because of this, her confidence is not based on appearance. It is based on alignment between what she believes and how she lives. This alignment is important because when your actions match your values, there is less internal conflict. You are not divided between what you think you should be and what you actually are. You move with clarity, and that clarity creates strength. There is also a patience in her approach. She does not rush to prove herself or to reach a certain point just to be recognized. She understands that growth takes time. That consistency matters more than quick results. And because of this, she remains steady in her efforts. This steadiness allows her to navigate challenges without losing herself. When things do not go as expected, she does not collapse or question her entire identity. She adjusts, she learns, but she remains grounded. Her confidence is not fragile. It is stable. Over time, this way of being becomes more natural. She is not performing confidence. She is living it. She is not trying to convince others of her worth. She is simply expressing it through how she lives. And this expression does not need to be loud. It does not need to demand attention. It is present in small things. The way she listens, the way she speaks, the way she respects her own boundaries, the way she carries herself even when no one is watching. This is what makes it powerful. Because it is not dependent on external conditions. It does not disappear when circumstances change. It is something she carries within, something that remains even in uncertainty. And in that quiet, steady presence, there is a kind of beauty that does not need to be explained. It is not created for others. It is a reflection of inner clarity, inner respect, inner alignment. Because when a woman moves in quiet confidence, she is not trying to become enough. She already knows she is.